All right, let's just make sure I'm going to switch to the right screen because that would be hilarious if I didn't. Hello, hi. I need my own music or I'm going to go crazy. Let me just get that going in the background here. You guys won't hear it, sadly. We have a big blank screen here, right? Big blank screen. Let's see if we pan. All right, cool, good. Everything's working. Oh my. So this first half, which is like, I guess I don't have a countdown timer to it, but it's just me talking for the whole 2 hours. I guess you guys are used to that by now. I'm just gonna start talking about where I got into 3D, why I got into 3D, and then how that kind of turned into where I'm at now. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if it'll take up to 2 hours. It might. With the questions, it might easily take up to 2 hours. So let's see. So I think the best way to start is to probably have the right window up. Let's just make sure we got this all good to go. So when it comes to, oh man, this is not what I need to be looking at right now. When it comes to how you get into 3D, a lot of people are like, okay, I want to make game art. And especially today, that's where you're like, everyone understands that there's game artists and you make video games and you have environment artists. But when I was, man, when was that? That was like, oh my God, when was that? Let's say 1999. Am I old now? Is that what happens? Am I old now? I think I would have been 13 years old. So I was like, oh yeah, no, I mean, even before that, I think I was like 10. Let's say 10 years old. And I'm talking to one of my uncles, my Uncle Bert, or Bertrand. And he's like, I'm going to make video games. And I'm like, what does that even mean? What does that mean? And, oh, Respio, thank you for the 41 months. Jesus. I'm like, what is that? Making video games? What does that even mean? Prior to that, I was like, oh, dude, Resident Evil and Silent Hill on PlayStation. I was just mind blown. And he's like, yeah, you can make video games. And my brain's like, can I do cartoons like that? That's immediately where I went. I was like, I'm going to do 2D animation. How cool is that going to be? And then a school visited my high school. And during the time of this, I'm sorry, you have this big blank screen. I'm not, this is all prelude to the blank screen being covered with things. I decided to go to this school that visited my high school. And while I was there, my uncle had he'd graduated, and he was working at Sega making games for like sports games, Sega sports games. You're like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's all right. I just like, that's so cool to me that he was making games. And then around the time that maybe I was about halfway through school, he made the jump to Lucas Arts, and I think he was there for like 10 years or something like that. He shipped so many games with them. And blank screen is the cutscene in which we hear DiNusty's voice as intro. But yeah, so we go from that to like, okay, I try 2D art, and I'm like, nah, this isn't, I don't like this whole slide, like going frame by frame. It's horrible. And then I started getting into, someone at the school was like, oh yeah, we have like the next semester we're going to be doing, I'm reading chat. It's terrible. You guys are awesome. Next semester we're going to be doing 3D. And I think this was 2002, right? And during that time, just to give you a perspective, and I didn't know about it yet, but during that time, the only ways to learn about 3D online was like 3D Total and a Polycount. That was kind of it, right? And maybe about halfway through my school, maybe another year later, is when things like Eat 3D with DVDs came out, and Noman was starting to push DVDs pretty heavily. But YouTube, think about this. There was nothing on YouTube teaching you how to 3D. It was very, very minimal. This is like 2005 at that time. So I find out, like, I'm like, oh yeah, this modeling stuff's pretty fun. I think the first thing I modeled was a USB stick. I don't know if Jay is in chat, but he remembers seeing that. Lorg, he remembers seeing me model that, and he's like, okay, you found something that you're obsessed about, because you clearly spent a lot of time on this thing. And then I found out you could put Photoshop files on those assets, right? And that's when it was like, my mind was blown. I was like, oh man, I've been using Photoshop in high school. I was making like fan websites and through GeoCities and just making art, Bryce 3D, blah, blah, blah. But then it was like, okay, I'm using 3ds Max. This is crazy. I was using Maya before it was Autodesk as well. And it was the coolest thing. And yeah, it blew my mind that you could put Photoshop files on surfaces of 3-dimensional geometry. And from that point on, it was like, okay, I'm not interested in my oil painting anymore. I don't want to play guitar anymore. I just want a 3D all day, every day, right? So let's fast forward to maybe about a year and a half into that is when I got my first internship. My first internship was in 2007. And that's this guy here, or it's in 2006 to 2007. So I worked on this game, Pirates of the Burning Sea, long time ago. Now, Pirate MMO, PC only. Oh my. That was quite the eye-opener. So I was there while I was going to school as well, and they manage your time between the project and school. One of the teachers was the art director for this project, right? And I learned a ton in there. At the time, I was using 3ds Max. The school had transitioned into Maya. And the main reason I'm getting into all these little nuanced, smaller details is because I want you guys to understand that, like, everything that I went through and everything that you're going through is very similar. Like, things change all the time. Stuff's moving around. Which 3D package do I use? Which one's the best one? You know, all these questions to try and find a way to bring yourself up, right? So I was using Max. Halfway through school, they switched to Maya. Then I get this internship. They use Max and Maya. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. But I'm already switched to Maya, so I use Maya there. Now I started using Maya there, and some of the artists, like the best artists there, I looked up to a lot, right? And this is an internship. I'm like, oh man, how do you guys do it? Like, how are you making content so quickly? And they were showing me how they were using 3ds Max with their modifiers and the mirror modifiers, and unwrapping before you use a modifier and mirroring everything. And yeah, you're unwrapping and texturing at the same time, or texturing completely from the beginning using a template, and then just mapping to it, kind of like you would with a trim sheet. So I thought that was pretty crazy. So during the internship, I just switched over to Max. And I was in Max for years after that, years and years. So this is all happening in Seattle, Washington. Around the time that the game's getting ready to ship, I'm still in school, but I'm pretty excited. You know, we're shipping this game, and we ship the game. It goes pretty well, considering, like, this is before normal maps. Like, they didn't have normal maps in here. Normal maps were just starting to hit, like, the scene. And like, it got to the point where people were painting normals around this time. Like, they'd make a sphere of a normal map, and then they would eyedrop it and then paint that stuff in. So I went from that and trying to, like, pivot to, like, okay, I'm gonna get a job at this place. This is great. I interned there for over a year, and then when the moment came up, it was like, hey, are you guys gonna, like extend my time, or am I going to get like I would love to get paid. And like the whole team was telling me, because internships in Washington State at the time, I don't know what it's like right now, weren't paid. And it also depended on the studio. So yes, Andre, the world today is very different. So I'm like, okay, are we like, what's happening here? Do I get at least minimum wage? Because that would be good. This whole thing kind of pans out to the point where essentially it becomes the reality that I'm not gonna get. They're not gonna fill the role. They just finished the game, and if I look back to it today, it's like, of course you're not gonna be hiring people. You just finished the game. If anything, your staff's probably gonna shrink down, or you're gonna retain what you have, and it'll shrink just a little bit, right? Because you don't want to be paying people. This sounds terrible, but you don't want to be paying people when you're not creating content that's locking in money in the future. And I mean, this is 2006. Sure. I totally get it. Anyways, I was super trying to figure out like, okay, what am I going to do? And when I see people in the Discord today, they're always like, what am I going to do? I need to make sure I get a job. I need to make sure that everything is solidified for me, and I'm going to be good and have a job once I finish school. How do I do that? So I started going crazy online, right? I started looking around online and just kind of trying to figure out, okay, how do I network? How do I meet people? This is how I found Polycount. So I found Polycount around the same time I was starting to get pretty active in game artisans. And I mean, if anyone's familiar with all of those, you've got game artisans, Polycount. There was 3D Total, and 3D Total was doing articles just like you see with 80 level today, or with experience points. Like there's articles coming out, they're covering really good artists, and if you were to make those articles, like that was a super big deal. I would say it's relatively easy to get an article as long as your scene is grabbing some attention. Whereas back then, man, if you were to get an article, that was like getting an award, you know? Not to put down like how easy it is to get one today. It's still difficult. But yeah, so I started doing challenges, competitions, and leading up to when my contract would end with this my internship would end with this company, I needed to figure out what am I going to do. So I talked to everyone on Polycount. I became super active. I did all of the challenges. I tried to be active in game artisans. I was kind of poking everywhere. And eventually, it was time to graduate, and still nothing was happening, right? I worked on my portfolio like crazy right up to that endpoint. And at the end of school, we present our work. Like what is our presentation for our portfolio? And local studios around the area, I think around that time it would be like Flying Lab, Zombie, Microsoft, and ArenaNet would be the big people that would show up. And I was like, okay, well, let's see if any of those people are on these communities that I've joined, right? So I just blasted like, hey, here's my portfolio. I stuck my neck out there and I was like, here's my portfolio. Like, show me the way. I'm looking for a job. If I'm going to be showing my portfolio on this day live, if you want to meet me in person, just, I'll be here. And I said the school and the area, you know, and someone, which I can't, it's been a while. I can't even remember the names of some of these people, but they're so important to the future of where I am now, right? Reached out to me on Polycount through the thread. People are saying, oh yeah, it's a good job. And like, oh, you should work on this. And like, hey, there's a typo here. I'm notorious for typos, of course. There's a typo here, fix this, look at this thing, adjust this. I was doing all those adjustments leading up to this viewing. Someone contacted me on that thread and was like, hey, we're going to be there. We'll be sure to swing by and talk to you. I was like, oh man, okay, this is the first person that's actually said something like directly to me when it comes to this type of stuff. And so I was like, okay, well, I just need to make sure everything looks good. And here we are. Like, I've got a portfolio ready. I've got the only like true ZBrush scene in it because the school at the time was not teaching ZBrush. It was ZBrush 2.5. And ZBrush ZBrush 2.5 was rough, man. Just to go on a little tangent, when you would save, if you didn't save it as a tool, it automatically would save it flat as a 2.5 document. So you'd lose all your 3D. It's just gone. So you learn the hard way back then. So I learned ZBrush in my spare time, and at the school. I got them to install it on the computers, and even though there wasn't a class on it, I was learning it, how to use it. At the same time, I was learning how to use what was it? No, it was just ZBrush. No, Unreal 2.5. Oh man. So I was learning Unreal 2.5 in my spare time, and then trying to like figure out how to use ZBrush without any education. I was just going online, and it was just Polycount. This is pre-UDK, Paul. This is pre-UDK. And I was figuring out enough, and I was trying to like, okay, this is kind of working. And I have a ZBrush scene in my portfolio. So I'm at this class of people graduating. There were 18 of us. I'm at this group of 18. Greetings, hello, welcome. I'm looking at all the people that are graduating with me. I'm the only one who's got ZBrush on, working my portfolio. There's 18 of us, and if you look at the grand spectrum of things, right? When I started school, which was almost 4 years before that, there were 500 of us. So only 18 of us made it to graduation. Just to kind of sink that perspective in. A lot of people dropped off pretty early as well, right? So, yeah. And at the time, I think it was this school and Noman were the only ones teaching game art on the coast of the U.S. I mean, it's a combination of things. A lot of people leave, or it's not what they thought it was, or people leave for all types of reasons. But and I bet it's still true today. It's got to be. Things happen. Oh, I remember DigiPen. I don't know if DigiPen was. I think they were, but they were quite quiet around that time. But yeah, it was crazy. So Portfolio Day shows up. I'm like, all right, I need to be at least a little dressed up. I was gonna button up, right, and some jeans, casual dress up. And I'm standing there just kind of waiting around. People are walking around, and we were just like waiting for anyone to come up to us. And they don't really teach you to be like, oh yeah, you should say hey to people and try and pull people in. And I mean, I got lucky because I'm very chatty, so I'm always saying hi to people. Hey, how's it going? Welcome, blah blah blah. All the portfolio, are all down that way. So I was like helping them through, and then they would end up talking to me and then looking at my stuff. And then the group of people that said they were going to come in from Zombie Studios were like, yeah, hey, we're the guys who messaged you on Polycount. Like, you want to show us what you've done? The Twitch streamer before Twitch. Going back to ZBrush, I taught a lot of people ZBrush at school because no one else was teaching it. But so I have this conversation with them. They look at all this stuff like, oh yeah, it's pretty, like, this is pretty good, and yada yada. We're just having a good conversation. I think they talked to me for about 15 minutes, plugging the Empire in 06. We're having a pretty good conversation, and then they're like, yeah, cool. No, this sounds good. We'll get in. Like, I had a business card, right? Everyone's got a business card around then. So that was one of the things you were required to have for this event. So I gave them my business card, which I don't have a business card today. I don't. That's such an old thing. I don't know if it's still used, but I give them the business card, and then they call me They call me 3 days later, if I remember correctly. And they it's a phone interview, but like randomly. And it was like 5 minutes. It was a 5-minute phone interview just to confirm it was me. And to just like, oh yeah, they liked like what you were thinking about and all this stuff. As an introvert, I can confirm Din is hard work. Oh man, Ben. Hey, it got you using Substance Designer, didn't it? So yeah, I had that really quick interview. It was strange because it felt like an interview. Maybe it wasn't. They set up an appointment, and the next week I had an on-site interview. And if there's any advice I can give you for an on-site interview, is do your research on not only the studio, right? Look at the studio. Look at what they've made. Look at look at what they've made, how long they've been around. If there's anyone that's kind of big at their studio, they may want to plug that person and be like, oh yeah, what do you like? Why do you, if you can mention the director's name, that's the thing. What's your plan for the stream? Ooh, that's a good question. If you go here, go to the Discord. There's a schedule, but you're highlighting a very clear issue I have now, is that there is no schedule to just directly link you. Maybe Martin in chat can help you, or a moderator. But we're talking about how I got into games, as well as a portfolio review of my own work, because you guys have been asking for it for ages. So do your research. Understand the studio you're going for, what games they've made. If you're interested in what they're making, that's also really important. Above all else, get ready to be asked how much you want to make. That came up, and I was not ready for that. At the time, I was called Frozan, also misspelled. They will ask you sometimes how much you want to make. Ole, what's up, man? And I was like, oh man, okay, well. And then I gave them a number, right? And little did I know, like looking back at it, 2 pennies, please. Looking back at it, I think I undercut myself by about 10%. I want to be paid in USD. I think I undercut myself by about 10%, which is pretty deep, right? And this question was asked to me by the CEO of the company at the time. So, I mean, I gave a number that I thought might be a good number, and it was, I was underpaying myself by about 10%. Once I got into games, just to give you some perspective, this is why it's so important to find out how much you should be making. It took me 5 years to recover to get up to where I should have been, plus the 5 years, if that makes sense. Not only with this studio, but other studios, right? Because you're starting lower and you have to build your way up. So keep that in mind, because yeah, Rouge, it's relatable. So I get a job there. Oh man, it's only gonna get spicier. Are you ready? Oh really? I mean, they did hire me the next day. This is true. But yeah, so they did hire me, and let me see what's in this next chunk of stuff. Oh right, this is what is in my portfolio in 2007. You want to know what my salary was then? Okay, in 2007, what was it? In 2007, I think I was making 43,000 US a year. My celery. I think that's so. I'll be super honest. 42,000 US a year before tax. I hate this before tax crap, but yeah, before tax. I think tax around then was like for that amount would be like, don't. I'm probably gonna say it wrong, but I think it was 23 or 24% tax, state tax, and I mean everything gets taxed 10% in Washington State, but. This is the only numbers I'm going to give you because I imagine everything right now is probably everything else is probably not a good idea to share publicly. But that's where I started. Yeah, that was undercutting because I mean in the US it's kind of crazy now, especially if you're in Seattle or California. But let's dig into this stuff. So this is my work. Man, I might just go the full, this might just be a full video. Taxes are nuts. Yeah, it's weird. And then I'm like, let's go to Sweden. Taxes will be way better. It's fine. So this is the stuff that was that I was putting in my, this is a reference shot, by the way. We'll just put this, we'll do this. Again, a piece I never finished, right? But so when you look at this is just maybe half of what I had. So this is the ZBrush stuff I did here, right? And get this, there's no Dynamesh. There's no like separate subtools or anything. This is one single mesh from a blockout. And it was technically, look at the edge, man. It's the first thing I ever did in ZBrush trying to actually make something. And I mean, when I textured it in Photoshop on top of it. It wasn't even on the geometry, but I did like the concept because it was for the ArtStation challenge. Look, you can see Frozen there. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of small. Maybe we can blow this up. But yeah, you can see Frozen there. And I was trying to do everything at the time, right? It's like, oh, I can concept, I can draw. Like, I can't. I tried to concept as well, just trying to get a little bit more comfortable with the whole idea of it. Little did I know, I mean, today, honestly, I would say you don't need to concept your own stuff. If you want to, sure. I think you're just going to be slowing yourself down if you want to be getting good at a tool. So that way you can then use that tool and bend it to your will to make the things you want to make, right? If you're trying to come up with the design at the same time that you're trying to make work for your portfolio, you're just, they should be two separate things. I think this took me, I mean, this isn't even, I wouldn't even consider this done, but I think this was Photoshop with a Wacom tablet over like the course of 5 weeks or something like that. But like up here, this is a hilarious story. So this asset here was essentially my obsession with Call of Duty at the time, right? Call of Duty, super fun. Was enjoying it with all of my friends. And there's some texturing techniques that I had learned from Pirates of the Burning Sea. Before Pirates of the Burning Sea, I didn't know that you could go outside of the 0 to 1 UV space. So now that I knew that, it's like, oh, I'm just going to make like this single floor here, right? You can't even see the edge to the building. Oh, man. This single floor is just one tileable 1024 across the stretch of the wall, right? And I just make sure it tiles all the way around. And then I made a texture sheet for this window and a texture sheet that also included that little AC unit. I wonder if we can just really just blow this up and get in here. So you can see like these are all just being mapped to a existing texture. Now, the really funny part is the way I decided and learned how to do this kind of Atlas texturing. This is 2007. So this is like, how would I explain this? I've got tileable materials that I'm just mapping UVs to. And the way I figured out how these buildings need to be built and how the materials are separated is I literally opened up Call of Duty, I thought it would be hilarious. I went on Google and was like, "There's no way this exists." But is there a, you know how you do a print screen? I Google searched print screen 3D games, and I somehow stumbled across a tool that strips out all of the content that's in the G buffer or in the RAM of in the video RAM of your video card that's in your frustum, your view frustum, and dumps it out as a freaking FBX file with all of the materials and the textures. I was like, what is this? How? Wait, no. And that was, I think that was the moment when I quit talking to a lot of people. Like, that's when it, like, my brain exploded, right? It was like, oh my gosh, I can just, what? And then I noticed, like, I went in and started like trying to move the building around to understand how they're building stuff and putting stuff together. I instantly was like, okay, how are they doing their UVs? Like, how are their materials separated? And I noticed that these floors were separated, and I'm like, what is this? So like this little sliver in here is a material on its own, right? It's the same material that's on the balcony. And actually now that I think about it, it really opened up my mind to how production works, right? So I guess this is the only thing that I can closely relate to what you guys feel like when you see someone streaming and they show you how they do something, right? And if you'd never seen it before, like all of a sudden, oh my gosh, this changes everything. Like the epiphany, like 3D epiphany moments, like game dev epiphany moments is, I guess, what I would call those. Brain fire. Every stream. Oh, thanks, Jordan. So, and you can see like the way I'm presenting the content reminds me a lot of like people I see in school right now. So like, okay, I need to show the diffuse, and like look at how I'm using the UV space. Like these normals. This is me trying to get normals to work through Crazy Bump. I think this is Crazy Bump. And yeah, so I have a bunch of stuff like this. I've got some supporting props that I was building together with it. It's also the first time I saw, like you can see it down here, see the trash on the ground? It's the first time I saw trash and like paper on the ground that was using alpha cutout to show the, so it was just cards. But then they were scattering paper. I'm like, oh my God, how come I didn't think of that? And I started doing that as well. And that was a huge game changer. You have to remember too that I'm rendering this in 3ds Max because you can't getting it to look like that as a student in Unreal 2.5 is just not, it's just not going to look good. Unreal 2.5 didn't even have a node-based material editor, if I remember correctly. The shutter, man. So I keep doing this stuff. I start blocking out some things. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna make this stuff, and I think this is, what else did I do here? Nice, but that's terrifying. I built my portfolio up as quickly as possible. Like when you look at the big picture of what my portfolio is, it's at that time was whatever I could put together in the last like 6 months of school. And I think I really hard focused on it for 3 months. Yeah, so I really focused on it hard for those first like 6 months. And I would say that last 3 was like, what did I write down? I wrote down, go to bed at 10, wake up at 6, have breakfast, art until 12, have lunch, art until 7, and then watch a movie with the partner I was seeing at the time. And then repeat. I did that every day for about 6 months. And those last 3, it was a little bit heavier than that. This bunker is actually from I think it's from the Warhammer RTS. Whoa, wait, 26 hours a day? No, it's not 26 hours. So what, I wake up at 10, work until 6 in the morning. Work from 6 to 12, so 6 hours. And then have lunch. And then from 1 to 7, I was arting more. And then it was watch a movie, sleep by 10, up at 6 again. Work so fast that time slows. I'm pretty sure we've seen animes like that. So this guy, hello. Yeah, I don't really advise a grind like that, but I think if you know exactly what you're trying to make, like I had goals set for myself, right? So I worked on this one, Saw. Hello, Saw. And as Andre was saying in chat, you see what year this is? This is 2007. What a cutie. This game was not out yet. We were working on it. 2007 is it's going pretty well. I now have a job. Everything's cool. But when it really comes down to it, 2008 rolls around and the housing market crash crushed everything. I think our publisher filed bankruptcy within days of the economy tanking. Silk, yes, this will be. And they paid out of their pockets to make sure that we were paid while we worked on our portfolios, on our resumes or CVs during the time that the CEO flew all over the world trying to find a publisher. And I think they did that for, I think that was for 3 months. And then they had to lay off 72% of the studio. So just to give you a perspective on that. So they laid off 72% of the studio after 3 months. And you think about it, they had people helping us with our resumes and our CVs. They had people coming in to help us. We were even doing mock interviews just in case, right? He's basically backing up everyone. And yeah, at the end of it, they laid off like 72% of the studio. And they tried everything they could to keep that afloat. And they did keep it afloat. I got another job, and around the time I was accepting that job, these guys called me and said, "Hey, of course I got laid off, man. I was a junior. In the US, the bottom comes out first, right? If possible, if you can salvage things." So, during that time, it was like, okay, well, now I'm not working, and I need to look for studios. So I'm applying everywhere. I do an art test. I get into a studio. And then when I get into that studio, these guys contact me again, Zombie. They're also not around anymore, but man, what a great studio. It was referred to as the cactus of Seattle. It's like sometimes there was no water, but somehow it was still alive, just doing all right. They didn't really do much overtime either. It's interesting studio, but they rehired everyone back, and I would say a majority of people came back. They finished the game and shipped it, but I'd already locked in myself at another studio, and out of respect, I should probably follow that through, So we're not going to talk too much about the studios because I want to leave that for the next talk, which is in 30 minutes. So I'm going to go into like each of the beats of like how studios work, what that all means, how you get into the industry, or at least how I can assist you in understanding what the industry is looking for and all that jazz. Are you going to have chat in the video? No, there will not be chat in this video. Sadly, what you're seeing right now is what will go on YouTube. But what I want to show you is the artwork, right? So 2008, I didn't really do all that much. Of course, there was the layoff, right? I worked on the school bus for a mod, and I wanted to show you guys this. I have my popcorn. Enjoy this stream so much. Oh, thanks, man. Get good, fam. So I made this bus for Zombie Panic, I think it was. And you can see, I wanted to show you because this is how I thought about presenting work at the time, Like, oh, I should show the top so they can see that I'm mirroring the work. And like you can see, there's no, like, reflections aren't a thing right now. There's no such thing as metalness. There's no such thing as roughness. It's all being painted in, right? So this is all being done in Photoshop. And yeah, for the most part, it was it was me just trying to learn how to make things so that I could better myself. That I was still working when I made this. How do I push myself to become better? Because what I'm seeing at work is really inspiring, and it makes me want to push. I'd gotten comfortable enough at work, dude. I was only I was only at that job for 4.5 months or something like that, and then the economy tanked. Man, that's so crazy. But this piece here was actually, I was really inspired by Dead Space and all of the shapes that they were using and the hard surface details. And I was trying to figure out how that all works. I was using Max, right? And I was just trying to figure out how they do their things. I never finished anything from here. I think I immediately moved on. And then there's of course there's an art test in here because I had to jump to another studio. But zooming in on this one, I mean, you guys recognize this scene. Dude, Dead Space is amazing, man. It like took what I loved from Resident Evil and Silent Hill and just kind of slapped it together and terrified me. Those jump scares, everything about them. So this is, I believe this is a Fang concept. And I was like, dude, this is how I learn hard surface. And I mean, again, didn't finish it. The reason I'm showing you these is because I think now when I look back on it, I think what these are is me exploring modeling. I wanted to learn how to do more hard surface like shapes. This is support loops in sub D, man. And I'm like, okay, how do I do this? How do I make these shapes? And it's just me solving shapes. And once I got to a shape that I was pretty happy with, my brain's like, all right, well, you've achieved what you, even if I wasn't aware of it at the time, I'm like, I'm going to make this scene. What I was actually doing was testing how to do something. And once I achieved how to do that thing, I lose interest. So that it's really about identifying what you're building and realizing if it's a huge learning experience or if you're actually trying to make a scene. You can do both of those at the same time, but I think if you're not aware that you're doing that, you're going one way or the other, and you're most likely one side's going to fail, right? So this was 2009. I dug through everything that I could. The number one reason projects get abandoned is you get bored. Why do you get bored? Because you're not learning stuff, maybe. Maybe you were wanting to learn something and you just aren't learning anything anymore, and it's just about pushing the buttons to get to the result that you know you can get to. Like, that sounds right? And if that's going on in your head and you're not actually saying that, you lose interest. You lose the drive. Let's see here. So 2011, we'll touch on this in the next talk. 2012, again, we'll touch on this in the next talk. Now you can see what's happening. I'm working on projects. I'm going studio to studio. I'm working on projects, and they're not really giving me the time to work on stuff, right? So I ended up doing this, which was when I was trying to learn Keyshot. Basically, I sculpted this in ZBrush because I saw some people doing hard surface in ZBrush, and I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. And then, like, I was like, wait a minute. If I render the same shot with different materials, I can do the material IDs in Photoshop. So I just rendered the same image with this material, and a rust material. And then I went into Photoshop and masked them all out. So I was painting materials in Photoshop. And so the goal was to just get a really nice, clean looking asset, but not like, try and bake it down, solve like trying to make it look really nice and high res, but on a low poly. It's just make it look cool. And so, yeah, all this masking and perspective that you're seeing is just painted in. Like, you can see the rust is going out of the silhouette a little bit. This is all Photoshop brush strokes. Dude, Substance Painter, man. You don't even have to UV right now. You can auto UV Substance Painter and then just go nuts on it. So this is an interesting time. Again, I was unemployed. This is around the time I'm about to go to Sweden. I was unemployed, so I'm like, I'm gonna make this. I actually started streaming this, and you can see this logo. This is the other username that I used to have, Frozen. And I just started modeling this. This is all sub D again, no ZBrush. So any of the organic stuff you see is just me moving sub D meshes around vert by vert to try and make it look right. And yeah, I mean, this was quite the learning experience. DiNusty. Pay respects. Yeah, so I made a bunch of these pieces and just kept building on this. And I think yeah. See, after I got, this has a dynasty look, does it? It's getting there, isn't it? You've seen it form. We keep scrolling down here. And this is when I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna sculpt stuff. I think this actually happened before this scene. And I think it's in this year because I posted it online this specific year. What is this? 2014. So I'm a huge fan of Starcraft. And the reason I started sculpting this was to try out Dynamesh. This Dynamesh thing that ZBrush just came out with looks like a game changer for someone who does not know how to like prep the topology of geometry. You know, to sculpt on a character. Dynamesh just removes that whole problem, and I can just keep sculpting. So I just keep working on like smaller details. It's more of a sculpting steady than like I'm gonna finish this type of thing. A 4-gate rush, get out of here, man. But yeah, I just dug in deep and just kept learning. All of the colors are Polypaint, and was just trying to figure out how to get the shapes that I want. This is, I think, how I learned the core elements of like how ZBrush works for myself, and became comfortable enough that I can step away and come back and get right back into it. You can see too, I even used the Polypaint and sketched on top of the geometry in order to see like where I wanted details to show up. And I believe I streamed a lot of this as well back in the day. There are no VODs of that, by the way. But yeah, I just kept going and got to Sweden here. And then I was like, okay, I should take a stab at substance designer. Made this guy. Look at that. Ole, how do you feel? How does that make you feel? Do you feel good now? Is that organized enough for you? I'm at the point where we're like, okay, we're at 2055. Yes, so neat. So neat. So this is Substance Designer in 2016. And then I'm sure you guys remember this stuff. The Ancient Ruins of Untold, Unpublished Work. This is when we really started to stream, right? So I'm building, you can see the benefit of streaming for me now, right? Is like, it got to the point where, oh man, if I stream, it'll force me to make art, and then I can just keep going. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do all these things. I'm gonna sculpt all these details. I'm gonna look at references, and it just keeps going. It got so crazy at one point. And then eventually I was like, I think I just need to change the scene. I'm just not interested anymore. And a lot of these things here, these are all using the techniques that I had learned when I saw Call of Duty, when I stripped that content out. And I was like, dude, this is I'm having a whole lot of fun with this. This is actually when I switched to Unity, I wanted to see like what you could get out of Unity with their node-based material editor. For a little while there, we switched to Unity because I wanted to show people that just because you're in Unity doesn't mean that you can't make a good art. And I think Exile in the Discord does a great job of showing that these days. Here's an Unreal shot. Oh man, Judd, we're about to get to Modo, bro. We're about to get to Modo. So up to this point, I'm still in 3ds Max, right? This is when we hit Modo territory. I started using like scatter nodes and trying to understand how that all works. And I just, this one right here, this is what I would call the Tor effect. This is the Tor effect. Essentially, I saw what Tor Frick was doing and was like, what? How? Wait, what? What's going on here? How is he getting these bevels without, you know? I mean, look at the geometry. I mean, it's a little blurry, but nothing is welded. Everything's pushing into everything. Tor Frick, man, he lit the way for anyone who was curious about Modo. I was looking at Modo a little bit when I was in the US and was like, dude, this is crazy. Dude, we are not getting this portfolio review. Either way, I want to show you all of the stuff because I think it's important to understand where artists come from because they're not always good. I mean, I'm still not, I would say for me, I still am not where I want to be. But seeing progress helps make it relatable to everyone who is at this point, or they're way over here, you know, or they're trying to figure out how this works. You know, you get there, and you get there through like just trying. Where am I? I'm lost now. Okay. We may run over a little bit, but we're gonna get to the next talk, which is gonna be about the industry soon. Oh, I'm so into it, man. I knew this was gonna happen. Time is out the window at this point. But I saw this spaceship. Do you know, dude, this is so funny. This spaceship I originally saw on CG Hub. For anyone who doesn't know what CG Hub is, it was basically ArtStation before ArtStation. And it just disappeared one day. And I remember seeing this concept again in ArtStation. Oh, that's great to hear, Vertex. And I'm looking at this concept again, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm learning Modo, and I want to see how far you can push hard surface. Like, see, I got detail normals in there, and it's all projected. There's no UVs on this, and it's all using the round edge shader, which is how we were getting this effect in Modo. So I was like, okay, I'm going in. I've never made a spaceship before. I'm not a hard surface artist. Let's do this. How do I move this? Bring to front, page up. Let's do this. Okay. I'm still learning this Miro thing. So I block out the whole thing, right? Of course this isn't going to be finished because I learned what I wanted to learn from it. But you can see all the major details are there. And then I'm like, this to me at the time, this is a block out. And I'm like, oh man, I want to like, okay, how do I connect these things? Where do these connect? And I end up bringing in different material types just to get material definitions. And this is why I suggest everyone places, hey, Andrea, everyone places materials to separate and identify. Like, look how much more interesting it becomes the moment you separate things with materials, different roughness values, and colors, right? So we got those elements in. And then I'm like, okay, how do I take this flashlight to the next level? Because that's, in my head, I'm like, dude, that's a freaking flashlight. So I started Boolean actions into faces and just trying to figure out how to make these details. And it's like, how far can the round edge shader go? I found limitations. I found ways that made it work better. What Ben said, what did Ben say? Yeah, age does not matter. I will get into that real soon. But yeah, I kept detailing these out, right? And I just kept going and going and going, trying to understand how to do these elements. There's the inside edge of the engine. You can see what happens is, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this before as well, is you get hyper focused into one spot. You start big, and then you're like, oh, and then you look at this one spot, and then you back up, and then you're tired. You just don't want to do it anymore. So this is where I ended. I was just starting to figure out how to do materials without UVs and projecting all these details on using tilables. This is not an unpublished ArtStation, because ArtStation, I wasn't as active in it at the time. So there's no UVs on this. It's all using round edge shader and then material defining through node based and mask generation at render time. He gonna fly. And I mean, to me, this, when I look back at this, because this is really weird, I haven't actually looked at this in years. When I look back at these, I think I actually succeeded in what I was trying to do. But back then I was like, oh man, you feel bad for setting it down. You know what I mean? So 2019, 2020, and here we are. Let's take a look at this guy. There's almost 200 of you guys here. Thanks for hanging out. Is that still Modo? Which part? Down here? All this stuff? This was all Modo at the time, yeah. Because I was trying out that round edge shader. Gotta get the taste, you know what I mean? Dude, round edge shader is super nice. Super nice. Okay, let's see if I can frame this okay. So I've got this screen grabbed in here instead of the actual site. So I can actually move these around if we want. So, I mean, we got about 15 minutes before the next talk. And the next talk is just me talking about getting into the industry. I covered a lot of it when we were in the beginning. So there may be a little bit of repeating for you guys. But for anyone who jumps in knowing like when I was going to talk about it, they won't have missed it. You know what I mean? Anyways, let's take a look at this portfolio. So you guys have always asked me to do a portfolio review of myself. And well, I guess here it is. So if I go to the very bottom, like up at the top, I would say this follows a lot of the pattern, right? That I tell people to do. Like, make sure all of your text is around the same area and you have a pretty consistent layout to your thumbnails. But if you go down, it's my portfolio, I would say, is more of a living blog of posts. And I haven't really scraped out like the old stuff, which I kind of feel like I should do. I don't know if I need to or want to. I kind of like having the older stuff there. I mean, you see Josh says like leaving something old in there is nice because it reminds you where you came from. It's also difficult for people trying to get work and then you have something that's possibly pulling your portfolio down. So I get that side of it as well. Oh, Dooley, dude, that's amazing to hear, man. Message me on Discord sometime. I want to hear your story. That's it. Just go here. My DMs are open. Just poke me. So the ZBrush sculpts is probably the most recent one. And this was done through a challenge, which I didn't finish because, of course, there's no time ever. But it was a challenge through, I believe, the club, right? And you're supposed to do a rock every day for 30 days. I will get my portfolio up on the other side if we want to dive into each one of these as well. But I got the idea from Alex, who got the idea from the person I can't remember right now. Let me see here. He got the idea from Sabrina for making a piece that represents all of your sculpting that you do. So that way you're not posting a lot. It's kind of like a living living club, I saw club in the chat, like a living blog post that just sits in your list, you know. Here, I'll give a link to Sabrina's. There we go. And then I'll give a link to Alex's. There you go. Yeah, they're amazing, both of them. So this is what a developer's portfolio looks like. They're not really doing personal art these days, right? They're kind of doing their job. And then the hope is that their job creates enough artwork for them to post stuff on ArtStation during an art drop and whatnot. If we keep scrolling down here, you'll see it starts to break down a little bit. Do you republish it every time you add something to it then? No, you don't. And I think if you want coverage on a post like this, the way you're doing it this way, I would say you probably make a blog post about it. And then you push it out on all of your other social platforms. You say, hey, new sculpt in my Zebra Sculpts post on my ArtStation with a link to it and everything. You'll keep getting people revisiting. But you have to remember it's not about people seeing it. It's about you archiving it for yourself. And it's in there if someone happens to stumble across it. If you want it to be noticed, then I would suggest making an actual post, right? This is like a great way to archive your own work, especially if you don't have the blog feature, for example. But if we keep going down, you can see I've got the titles here. These are very busy images, and I would say, especially this one is very busy. I would say maybe this thumbnail could be replaced. I want to dig pretty deep into the older stuff because, so if you look at these posts, these ones are all pretty. They're all pretty good. Let me tear this page out, and we can look at the actual post here. So these are. Let me just do this. Let's see here. Oh yeah, beautiful. There we go. Okay, so maybe this is better than the how I was doing it. These posts they're pretty organized, and you're thinking about composition. I think going really wide is nice. You'll see I'm always kind of framing things right here, like on a third. Lots of third stuff going on. Man, we need ArtStation needs a swipe tool where you can grab us and change like time of day. Should do a thumbnail focus stream. That is a great idea, Ollie. But yeah, I actually like this framing quite a bit. But there's times where it's like, oh, I'm really proud of this place, but there's not really many angles you can take pictures of it, right? And a lot of the times it's like, okay, maybe there's too many pictures in here. Sure, these are all upgrading. Maybe it should be a GIF, right? Maybe you show the final one, and then you have a GIF of 3. So that would cut the scrolling down, which I think scrolling is just too often. I think as well, I could probably just go and re-edit these images, re-download them, and put them in sequence as a video that just loops, where it just swipes through them. Because see, I do like the upgrade shots as well, but it's like it's a lot of scrolling, and when you're scrolling, you don't have the context directly next to each other. It becomes really difficult to see the differences. So a lot of times there's too many scrolling moments where you're like, okay, how much of this am I going to see, before it's too many? And then again, I kind of break my own rules here. I've got an article in the middle of my portfolio. We should just move this. This should move all the way down here. Hey, thanks, Larry. We should move the article way down here. It doesn't need to be up in the middle of the portfolio, making everything random. And look at there's a substance material. It's like in time order. What do you think of cinematics to show an entire scene? I mean, I think that's a great idea. As long as they're not too long and you edit your shots really well. Do you think that work for environments, Jeremy, like non-static renders? I mean, nothing is better than an image that's moving. Like this, if you could see that in motion, so much more impactful. Title change, what do you mean? Oh, tell me. But I want to get into these things here because we always talk about I always say post really high res images, right? Or take the screenshot at 4K and then shrink it down. This is the exact reason why you should do this. So if we look at this thumbnail or this art piece, do you see the stepping in the image? Like this whole back area is complete trash because of this. So this was taken at 1080 and not 4K. And I was too lazy to go back and re-grab them at 4K. Because like, dude, look at what it does. Oh, Exile. All your pieces are at 1080. Yeah, go back if you can muster up the energy. Go back and switch it to, even if it's gonna go into your portfolio as 1080, get it at 4K and then down res it to 1080 in Photoshop and then put it in here. You'll get a much cleaner image. It's very important. It's very important. Man, you can really see it in some of these. Like if I go to the survival post, is it survival? Yeah. Like look at this image. Oh, this is horrible. Look at the back. Huh. Ugh. So is it SAIG or SAIG free? So if you don't have Pro, that's fine. Render at 4K, down res at 1080, it'll still look better than this. That's why I'm like, do that. But yeah, that's like my biggest pet peeve with screenshots in my portfolio. And where are we at here? Anti-aliasing plus, yes. So, and you can see some of my older stuff in here as well. There's even the Skrillex work that's in here. But for the most part, I feel like my thumbnails are pretty good. I get really picky about stuff. Like you can see the terminal and Dragon's Nest text is smaller than the survival text, but all these texts are bigger than this one. That's because this one's text couldn't actually fit, right? So you had to downres it or lower the text size. So if you're lowering the text size there, you should go back and lower the text size in all of these. I don't even think I have the PSDs of these anymore. So it's like, how do you even redo that? And like these look like gray box as well as this one. I mean, this is technically work in progress work, right? I would say this one was done. This one was never completed, but I posted it anyways. And these guys, actually for this project, there was no texturing required. It was just to build for them to render in the sequences behind Skrillex during the show in Ultra. So these are me just showing sculpting and getting like really weird results and creepy things, right? Like this thing, this machine thing that held his logo up and stuff. This is like, you recognize the shapes? This is all ZBrush and learning how to do hard surface in ZBrush. If it's with reason, Juice, definitely. Oh yeah, I totally got this Skrillex gig. I worked on that in my spare time at home, and that played at his show in Ultra 2012. Super cool. Look at that show. There's crazy stuff going on there. Bronze. I'm so sorry. But like this stuff's down here, and then Lord of the Rings War in the North. I worked on this as well. And this isn't really representative of what you can do today, right? Nash fan, actually these meshes, they wanted outright. They didn't want low polys, they didn't want bakes, no decimation. I mean, man, I think when I made this, decimation didn't even exist yet. So they just wanted the raw mesh. They're like, yeah, it's cool. But like I was saying with this Lord of the Rings stuff, it's very old, you know? The Skrillex gig I actually got because a friend of mine looped me in. He's like, hey, I'm going to be on this project. Do you want to be on it in your spare time? And I said, yeah, let's go. And then he let me in on it. I got an offer with the set rate that I had set, and there it was. Oh, I'm working with Skrillex. That's crazy. Or a team to support Skrillex in his show. Crazy during that time, because 2012 Skrillex was huge, you know? But yeah, oh my God, this is an art test. We will come back to this. We will come back to this. Can I just drag this in here? Yes, I can. We're doing it. We're doing it live, guys. Where are we at here? There we go. Goes right there. Did you start using Blender because of Skrillex? No. No, I didn't start using Blender until 2019. But yeah, before I take a small break, do you guys have any questions specifically about my portfolio? Because I feel like some stuff that I should change is I should move these guys right down here. Maybe move these here. Oh, man, this is going to get all kinds of messy. Like there's no text on this one. I should get some text on that. You know? Ooh, that's okay. What's your next aim for portfolio? Actually, that one scene I'm working on right now on the stream. Oh my God, my brain. The Tim scene, the really stylized one. Your personal content, would you like to add to your portfolio in the future? I mean, more stylized art, because I do realistic work, right? So to do stylized stuff on the side is kind of fun because I can intermix them together. How do you go about capturing images for games you've worked on? Usually there's a screenshot tool built in, or I mean, as far as I know, that's kind of how it's always been. But some stuff that's not in here actually that I should add is the Forza, because I worked on Forza 5. I should put Forza in here. Yeah, I should put Forza in here. It's not in here right now. I also don't have War in the North. Not War in the North, Shadow of Mordor in here because I wasn't there when they finished it. So I feel it would be like, while I have it in my about section as something I worked on, I think I left too early to be posting that on my portfolio and saying I made that stuff, right? I will say that I had worked on it, but I'm not going to take the work away of whoever had polished and made that stuff better, right? Or replaced and completely redone a scene. I can't say that's mine. That would be weird. But I was on that project for a while as well. But yeah. Yeah, it does break the whole, I don't know. Let me see if I missed any other. Did you pretty much finish the temple scene that you did in Unity? No. I was maybe about 80% there. That last 20%, that last 10%, that is everything. I should post what I made from it though, right? Because there's some crazy stuff in there. What piece am I most proud of? I think this scene. I pushed really hard to make that one happen. This one. I worked on the outside, the inside, how it changed. It's very busy though. It's hard to take screenshots of this. But yeah, it's madness, man. Madness. This one was also really fun to work on. Mainly, the people I worked on this scene with directly were such good artists, man. It was crazy. Like I was sitting with Matthew O'Halloran. Paulina was there. I can't say Paulina's last name. But dude, the team was great. And it's like now everyone kind of scatters around. But I'm going to take a 10-minute break and then we're going to get into everything that has to do with how I got into games, things I would suggest you watch out for. And throughout that entire talk, we're going to be stopping and answering questions as well.